In this lesson, we're going to continue to talk about the environmental analysis part of market sensing. Specifically, we're going to focus on discussing the social, cultural, demographic, and global aspects of environmental analysis. Previously, we have reviewed in greater detail the aspect of competition, economic, regulatory, legal, and political, technological, and natural environmental aspects of the marketing environment. Again, today we're going to focus on the social, cultural, demographic, and global aspects of the marketing environment. Let's start by defining what we mean by the term demographics. And demographics simply means that when we look at a population, or the people that live in an area, we look at the characteristics of that population, such as their age, their gender, their marital status, their ethnic background, their race, their income, where they live. Basically, we do this because from a marketing perspective, people might buy different deodorants, for example, based upon their gender. They might shop at different stores based upon whether or not they're married or not, or their age. And this allows us to better understand who our customer is. One major source of demographic information is the United States Census Bureau. And I'd like to right now look at this brief video from the Census Bureau as soon as it loads for us. Might take just a minute here.
The results from the 2010 census provide us with a unique look into the population, broken down by race, ethnicity, age, sex, and housing status of our country. The newest feature on our website is an interactive population map, which allows you to explore these demographics as they pertain to various geographical levels, starting at a national level and continuing all the way down to the neighborhood level. City and town planners, health agencies, the business community, local and state governments, community organizers, and many others use the information provided on this map to help them make informed decisions. Let's take a look at how the map works. First, go to 2010census.gov and click on the See More arrow. Here we are on the Interactive Maps homepage, where we can see the nation's population, a list of the most populated places, and gain easy access into the interactive map. By clicking on any of these tabs located along the right-hand side of the screen, you will be prompted to enter your city and state. Once inside the map, you will find a range of geographic levels. These levels are provided as a comprehensive way to break the statistics down into separate, usable categories. The interactive map also displays the total population color-coded by size, starting from the least populated states in the lightest colors and moving through to the most populated in the darkest colors. Another unique feature of the interactive population map is that you can compare the total population from state to state. Simply click the Compare button within the display box and then click Add Another Location, located on the upper right-hand side. From here, you simply click upon another location and then click Compare. You can continue to compare up to 5 locations by clicking Add Another Location. You can easily share this comparison chart by embedding it in your website by clicking Embed on the bottom of the display screen. This feature allows you to share relevant statistical information with members of your online community. So, as you can see, the Census Bureau's interactive population map is a comprehensive way for you to gather current demographic and statistical information on a variety of levels. The Census Bureau, measuring people, places, and our economy. For more information, visit our website.
So I hope that just gave you a little bit of perspective of demographics and what kind of information you can find from the Census Bureau. What I'd like to do now is to talk to you about what are some of the changing demographics of the U.S. population. And we're going to get this information from the U.S. Census Bureau Demographic Trends in the 20th Century Report. And so first we want to look just purely at the size of the population and where people are living. So let's look at some statistics. Again, this is the source that we're using. The U.S. population more than tripled in the last 100 years. So the U.S. population is growing. But in the last 100 years, the center of the U.S. population moved west and south. So we're not only seeing a growth in population, but a shift in where people are living. The South and West accounted for nearly 2/3 of the U.S. population increase from 1900 to 2000 in the last 100 years. In 1950, the U.S. Population became predominantly metropolitan, and it's become increasingly more metropolitan in each subsequent decade. In other words, we are no longer seeing population growth in rural areas, but we're seeing shifts to metropolitan areas. Interestingly enough, though, that metropolitan growth is mostly in the suburbs of the major cities, with little change in the population living in central cities. So again, what does this matter to marketing? Well, the more people that live in your potential area where you want to sell, the more potential people you have to buy. And if you're located in an area that has few people, you're going to have fewer potential customers. So again, from this U.S. Census Bureau Demographic Trends in the 20th Century report, we're going to look this time at what's happening to the age and gender composition of the U.S. population. So let's look at it. At the beginning of the century, in the 1900s, half of the population was less than 23 basically years old. But by the century's end, half of the population was more than 35 years old. That's the country's highest median age ever. So we're seeing the age of the population shift higher. Children under the age of 5 represented the largest 5-year age group in 1900. We had a boomlet, that's the baby boom, again in 1950. But by 2000, the largest 5-year age groups were 35 to 39 years old and 40 to 44 years old, which we hear a lot about the baby boom generation, those people moving through. So again, in terms of age, we're seeing people be a more older demographic. During the century between 1900 and 2000, the population of people aged 65 and older increased tenfold. It declined for the first time in the 1990s, due partly to the relatively low number of births in the late 1920s and early 1930s. But we will see rapid growth of the population aged 65 and older will begin again in 2011, when the first of the baby boom generation reaches age 65 and will continue to grow for many years. So we're seeing a population shift. Products then that are targeted to older people will have more people to sell to. Let's think about the gender, the gender or age. So the composition shifted from a majority of male population to a majority of female population around mid-century, around 1950. The males per females has declined every decade from 1910 to 1980, and then it increased again in the 80s and 90s. So we are no longer a predominantly male population. We've shifted to a majority female population. Again, what we can look at is other types of demographics that might affect demand for products and services. And now let's look at race and Hispanic origin and what's happening to the U.S. population there. Again, we're referencing the same demographic trends report. From 1900 to 2000, the number of non-Southern states with populations of at least 10% races other than white increased from 20 to 26. So we're seeing much of diversity in terms of racial diversity spread across the country. Um, in the Northeast, the Midwest, and the South, blacks constituted the largest share of population of races other than white in every decade in the 20th century. But in the West, each of the races other than white represented the largest share during the century. So again, where in the United States are you will be if you're marketing a product targeted to a specific race or Hispanic origin, where will these people be living? Look at the number of Hispanics of any race between 1980 and 2000. In the United States, it more than doubled. In just 20 years, the number of Hispanics in the United States have doubled. By the end of the century, 3 states, California, Hawaii, New Mexico, had a majority minority populations. In other words, the majority population previously was considered a minority, but now when you look at all the minorities together, these states have more minority populations than non-minority populations. So we're seeing a huge shift in racial diversity beyond whites throughout the country. Let's look at what's happening to American households. Again, same source of information. In 1900, 100 years or more ago, the most common household contained 7 or more people. From 1940 to 2000, it contained 2 people. So one of the things we're seeing is fewer people living in a household together. Again, this affects the way products and services are marketed. I think in grocery stores, you see increasingly number of single serving packages. In 1900, nearly half of the U.S. population lived in households of 6 or more people. By 2000, more than half lived in households of 1, 2, or 3 people. So we're seeing smaller household size. Let's look at what happens to the type of people living in those households. Between 1950 and 2000, married couple households declines from more than 3/4 of all households. 78% of all households in 1950 comprised a married couple. And in 2000, just over 1/2 of all households were comprised of a married couple. In 1950, people living alone represented 1 of every 10 households. By 2000, people living alone, 1-person households, were 1 of every 4 households. Again, we're seeing a shift towards smaller numbers of people living in households and even increasing numbers of 1-person households. During 1960 to 2000, women aged 65 and older accounted for 27 to 33% of one person households, but just 5 to 6% of the total population. So we're seeing that older people living alone tend to be females. Female householders were one of every five in 1970. By 2000, female householders are 36%, one of every three. It's interesting, too, that male family householders with no wife present became increasingly likely to have children present in their households. The Mr. Mom concept. So, again, what we're looking at here is how demographic data about the age, gender, geographic distribution, race, household data can affect the volume of people living in an area and therefore the market size for particular products and services.